Hello, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to our monthly amazing show, the Welcome to We Show. I'm Karen Palmer. I am one of your hosts here at this beautiful, beautiful show. I would love to invite you to, first of all, type into the chat where you're watching from. And also, if you are new to the We campaign page on Facebook, if you just like the page, you're going to get notifications whenever we're live. And we have incredible, incredible shows and wonderful, wonderful ways for us to co-create a world that works for all of us. We have answered that question, what can we do together that we can't do on our own? And we're going to continue to ask that question because our world is really needing our help with that right now. So if you have any questions or any comments or any suggestions, you can check out onto the chat, into the chat. You can type in anything that you'd like to ask the panelists, any questions that you'd like to ask, or any comments that you'd like to engage with us. We really love this to be more than a monologue, but a dialogue where we have a beautiful conversation with all of you who are watching. And we're so grateful for everyone who is watching right now. So if you are, new to us, please share this out, share it to your timeline, and you can share it to any of the groups that you're members of, or you can share it to any pages that you might manage. We're also gonna have the wonderful founder of we.net. We have my beautiful friend and the amazing founder of We the World, and the co-creator of the 11 Days of Global Unity, which is 11 ways to change the world, with participants including Desmond Tutu, Jane Goodall, Deepak Chopra, Ensler, Bill McKibben, and many others. Welcome, Rick.
And now I'll unmute myself. It's great to be on the show with you, Karen, and so excited about today's show. It's going to be another fabulous show, and it's called Reimagining Climate Change at the Climate Collaboratory. And today our guests will include Sue Blythe, Dr. Terry Harpold, Dr. T.H. Culhane, Savannah Turner, and Duncan Gabinu. Before we hear from them, I'd like to let you know that I and Karen and all of us, our global We team, wish you and your loved ones good health and well-being during this coronavirus crisis. The pandemic makes it clear that the health and well-being of our entire society depends on the health and well-being of each member, especially the most vulnerable. That idea is the essence of a we-based culture. And as we like to say, we want to go from a me-based culture to a we-based culture. So we stand with you and invite you to be part of We the World's growing We campaign community that is helping to build such a we-based society that prioritizes the common good. To collaborate with us as an individual or a group, you can sign up by going to we.net/partner. And of course, you can get a lot more information by going to we.net. Thank you. And now let's get on with the show. Sue Blythe is the founder of the Climate Collaboratory, a pilot project of We the World's campaign for the environment, and the University of Florida Extension. She is the grandmother of 8, doing what she can to make a sustainable, just, and peaceful world for them and their descendants. Sue, welcome to the show that you helped to co-create. Welcome to We Show.
Thank you, Rick. It's really a wonderful bounty and blessing to be able to see this thing growing. We planted it as a seed idea in October of last year. And through these monthly meetings, it's just been growing. And I think the show we have tonight is going to add a whole new dimension to what we're doing in the Climate Collaboratory. Together with Jennison Kipp at the University of Florida's Extension, we are starting a course on June 10th called Sustainable Floridians and Climate Collaboratory. We are focusing on Alachua and Bradford counties in north central Florida, and really bringing this we consciousness into a very local program for our county. We're working with organizations like the Climate Emergency Group that our city of Gainesville has declared a climate emergency. And so we're supporting that with tools and resources in the local community so that we can all work together for creative solutions to the environmental and social challenges of our time. So we have the Sustainable Floridians program. We have the Interfaith Climate Group and other environmental groups all working on this local action plan. And then as we get into September, we'll be reaching out to other universities in Florida and hopefully far beyond that. But this is why I'm really excited to have two professors from two of our Florida universities here tonight, and you'll meet them shortly. So our goal in the Climate Collaboratory is to plant seed ideas in the gardens of global unity. And we have local action plans we're building over the summer that we can report in September. And we have a lot of activities starting this coming month in June 13th. I mentioned the course is starting on the 10th, and then June 13th, the Secretary General of the United Nations every year announces the 100-day countdown to the International Day of Peace, which is September 21st. So we're going to be helping to bring a lot of people into that process and helping to make action plans that we can announce on the International Day of Peace. And we, the world, has 11 days of global unity that ends on the International Day of Peace. So that's our time of year. And we're really looking forward to making a big splash.
I wanted to mention something you were referring to, the Secretary General announcing the 100-day countdown to the International Day of Peace. So there's a theme, you know, they come up with a theme every year. And this year's theme is Shaping Peace Together. So it's, that's for the International Day of Peace.
Right. And I might add, the theme for last year, 2019, was Climate Action for Peace. And that's kind of the umbrella that we established the Climate Collaboratory under, and have been working all year for this. And so we kind of celebrate a year of climate action for peace and start a whole new year working for peace in different ways. And so that we're telling the whole thing in a children's story and bringing in stories of real people in our community who are doing wonderful work. So it's just going to be a lot of fun. I think we're trying to play this, we are playing the Sustainable World Games starting in September. And I hope we can get some ideas, plant some seed ideas tonight for how we go about that. So I thank you. Just looking forward to hearing our speakers.
And I think you're referring to children of all ages, right?
Oh, yes.
And
yes.
play this game.
It's children of all ages. We have activity. We have the children's story, which really is very simple and for all ages. And we have specific activities for children, youth, adults, and elders. And so everybody has a role to play, and we all need to work together.
That sounds great. Do you want to bring in our next guest, Karen?
Sure. We have Dr. Terry Harpold, and Terry is the Associate professor of English at the University of Florida. His research and teaching interests include environmental humanities, science fiction, and film, and animal studies. Yay, wow. He's a member of UF's Digital Humanities Working Group, co-founder of Science Fiction Working Group, and founder of UF's Imagining Climate Change Initiative. Wow. What is the University of Florida's Imagining Climate Change Initiative? Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Karen. You can hear me, yes?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, thank you
And
very
I
much.
love
Thank
your
you for that.
backdrop. It's beautiful.
This is an image from 20,000 Leagues Under the Seas, 1870. There's a famous passage in the novel, one of the most beautiful descriptions in the 19th century of a natural landscape where you can just about see them right there, these little guys right there. They walk through an undersea forest, and it's one of the first sort of exuberant descriptions of an undersea world in modern literature, and I teach a course on 19th century science fiction. So we often talk about the emerging discourse of naturalism in that fiction, and this is one of the most brilliant episodes of it. Well, okay, so you asked me about ICC. Let me try to preface that with a general observation of what it is I teach and why that's important in the context of ICC. So I was trained as a literary historian principally, but most of my teaching and research these days is in the field of environmental humanities. And I teach undergraduate and graduate courses and direct graduate research at UF in the fiction and film of environmental crisis and the literature and art of environmental resilience. And so my teaching is predicated on the understanding that climate is not just a geophysical phenomenon, but that it's a cultural imaginary. It's an expression of our lived world in words and sounds and images, and it's a domain of individual and collective reinvention and renewal. So I work with students to try to bring together the physical sciences, the geological sciences, the biological sciences that tell us about the near future of climate and the origins of the crisis that we're in now, but to connect that to the poetic registers of our climate experiences, to the cultural and the ethical realities, some of them very brutal, of the moment, and to the possibility of hope for a future. So that's a sort of general ethos. And ICC grew really out of that. In 2014, with the help of a grant from the Cultural Services of the French Embassy of the US, I put together a series of colloquia on this new genre called climate fiction. So this is a branch of literature devoted to imagining climate futures. And we include in that also
fascinating.
Yeah,
that is such a wonderful, what a wonderful topic.
Oh, it's a fascinating genre, moving much too quickly to pin down anymore. But so we had a series of lectures and colloquia, and these went over with great success. And obviously we had tapped into an appetite for a discussion of that vital subject. And so in the next year, I founded the Imagining Climate Change Initiative. We call it ICC. And since 2015, we have sponsored about 40 colloquia, invited lectures, performances, readings, film screenings. We do about a half dozen events each semester now. Our headline speakers have included more than 50 local, national, international activists, creators, researchers, scholars. We've worked with about 30 different departments at the university and with a dozen local and regional community organizations working in environmental education and climate justice. So the spirit of collaboration, which is the essence of what we're talking about tonight, and shared commitment to compassion and giving voice to our devotion to a vision of a more sustainable and resilient future, is sort of what we do. We also, for the last 2 years, have been running a modest but extremely successful program with the Office of the Alachua County Arborist, the Department of Parks and Conservation Lands. We call the program Trees with an exclamation point. And under the supervision of the arborist, teams of UF student volunteers go out and plant trees in Gainesville and in the surrounding communities, with a special emphasis on underserved and working class communities. So housing developments, playgrounds, community centers where the the animal and plant biodiversity, erosion control, shelter, and just simply the beauty of trees have often been neglected, and we want to reintroduce that into the lives of children and families that live in those environments. This is a good example of what Sue called a seed idea. I tell you, a Saturday morning spent with 30, 40 undergrads digging holes in the ground and planting trees is an amazing experience. I feel nervous saying it, but it might be the most important pedagogical thing I do, actually, is teaching them to do that. So we do that. And all of these activities of ICC, and I'll close with this, they're connected to my teaching, but also the teaching of a growing number of colleagues at the university who are working in the environmental humanities. We're creating synergies between the incoming speakers and the books that we teach and the films that we show. We're trying to create an intellectual and activist community at the university to keep the crisis in the foreground of people's thinkings, but also to give them meaningful ways in which they can take practical action, like the tree planting, for example, or animal welfare is another subject that we talk about a lot. But also to simply think about futurity, to simply think about a future. Because for many of our, perhaps we'll talk about this later today, maybe TH has seen the same thing. For many of our students, young people, they're menaced by the allure of a vision of ruin. They can't take their eyes off the accident that's coming. And increasingly, I find in my work, and it's the mission of ICC, and I'm sure we all share this, to create a language of simply futurity, simply imagining a future and thinking what it means. It might be a bad place, it might be a happier place, but students have to get, young people in the community have to get over the horizon of ruin, because it kind of paralyzes us, and we need to find ways to look beyond it. So that's the larger mission of what we're doing in ICC and what I'm trying to do in my teaching, and it has a real place in a major university, and its importance, I think, is becoming very clear.
So I have a question for you before we move on. My sense is that when you think about fiction or science fiction devoted or that uses the subject of climate change, I think of like disaster films like Waterworld or what's that other one? The Day After, I think it was called.
Tomorrow, yeah.
The Day After Tomorrow. And so are there examples of mainstream films that have a positive outcome that have climate change as a subject? I can't even think of any.
So you're going to give me this question. This is the first question you're going to give me, right? I mean, there aren't enough mainstream films with visions of hope, or visions of agency, visions of characters in the film, or in some cases the fiction, finding a way to preserve what's valuable to them. Now, there is much more of that in the literature. There was much more of that in print fiction and in much of the art. I worked with the Harn Museum of Art here in town a few years ago on a major exhibition of environmental art, and many of those images were images of hope. So you're right about the challenge that many of the images that are being given to young people today are images of disaster, of crisis, of unending, unrelenting despair. They have to get beyond that. And so we have to look for opportunities to talk about works of art or works of the imagination more generally that find, even in the face of disaster, some small space for individual self-reinvention. Again, the larger, I don't want to hog the time here, because the larger cultural fixation right now is on disaster. We have to admit the brutality of the reality that approaches us, but we also have to think about what, as I said before, is on the other side of it. What is on the other side of that, and how do we find, even in narratives of destruction and narratives of loss, how do we find some small space for holding on what's dear to us? Love, family, clan, those things.
Well, one thing that comes to mind is there was a documentary by Josh Fox, and I just looked it up. The name of it is How to Let Go of the World and Love All the Things Climate Can't Change.
Right.
And
That's fair. That's
and
fair.
it's a beautiful, I didn't see it, but I saw clips of it. It's a beautiful film about what people are doing, you know, coming together to address climate change. So it's a documentary, but it's very positive in that sense. So just one idea.
Well, thank you for that. No, thank you. And we'll have more time maybe to talk about this problem of hope on the other side of the horizon, because that's I think it's a pressing issue for all of us.
Exactly. Okay, so let's bring in our next guest. Dr. T.H. Culhane is director of the Climate Change Concentration at the Patel College of Global Sustainability at the University of South Florida. He is also the co-founding director of the nonprofit educational corporation Solar Cities, Inc., which helps community stakeholders solve urban ecology and development issues. So welcome to the Welcome to We show, Dr. T.H. Culhane.
Well, thank you very much. And this is a lovely segue, because what Terry was talking about features very strongly in all of our courses, the Patel College of Global Sustainability at USF. But chief among them is the new course, Visioning Sustainability, which uses Joe Tankersley, the Disney Imagineer and futurist's book, as a textbook. His book is called Reimagining Tomorrow, Making Sure Our Future Doesn't Suck. And meeting with Joe and meeting with others in that sphere who've been imagineering different futures, fictional and real, has transformed my life and those of our students, because as you're saying, Terry, they are too few examples of the utopia. We tend to ridicule the utopia. In fact, we removed the E, as Thomas More did, and kept it off. Thomas More in 1516 took the E and the O off of the prefix to topia, topia meaning place. And then there's E-utopia, which means the good or true place. And then there's O-utopia, utopia, which means no place or nowhere. He left it off so that people could make up their own mind what sort of place they wanted. Now we have a host of decidedly dystopian fictions out there, and we ridicule the ambivalence of utopia as if no one can ever drive toward the good. Interestingly, my wife and I just finished watching The Good Place, an NBC series, which does a nice job in a parochial way of extending our feelers into what a true good place might look like in the spiritual realm. It doesn't really cover much about our environment, although it does touch on those tropes, certainly. But I'm reminded from what you've been discussing of a quote that Fritjof Capra recently used from the former Czech president Václav Havel, who got the Gandhi Peace Prize. And his quote was, if I can find it here, hope is not the conviction that something will turn out well, but the certainty that something makes sense regardless of how it turns out. And I think what's so important about that is, as we say in our courses at USF, dystopia belongs in fiction. It's fun. It does have an allure, as Terry said. And I love The Walking Dead, and I've loved dystopian fictions going back to George Abbott's The Earth Abides that I read when I was like 10. My whole life has been futuristic visions of disaster on the horizon. But then looking around me and what made sense, and what we try to make sense with our students is with our five senses and whatever sixth sort of spiritual sense we cultivate, there is a logic to this universe, and dystopia doesn't make sense. It's madness. It's an insanity that is like going down the rabbit hole in Alice in Wonderland. It's like a bad drug trip. And yet when we look around us, what do we mostly see? We see loving people, loving families, couples deeply engaged, people who are trying to make ends meet, and they're doing the best they can. And I think most of us who've traveled around the world and know real people in real situations have rarely encountered really bad people. We've seen dysfunctional places and dysfunctional systems that people are bound up in, but we've seen that sense of hope in everybody and that compass bearing of, I know what makes sense and this doesn't make sense. So what we're trying to do in Solar Cities, and let me see if I can share a screen with you here for a moment. So I don't know if you can see my screen. Oh boy, but it's, how do I move this down so I can get to click to the one, there we go. So this is, can you see this in front now on the screen? This is our website, and it says Solar Cities is an organization that is all about connecting community catalysts, integrating technologies for industrial ecology solutions. That's the CITIES acronym is, connecting community catalysts, integrating technologies for industrial ecology solutions. And we picked as our central solution, and here's a map of all the places I've personally built this solution, all those black dots. We've picked the home and community scale biodigester, which can be built by anybody on any scale out of any material that can hold water, as our central technology, our solar plexus of the nexus around which we build our community industrial ecology systems. And the reason we picked that is because we recognize that food waste, if a country has been ranked notoriously as the third largest emitter of greenhouse gases, and yet the most amenable to individual and collective action because we all have food waste. I mean, we can't push that aside and say, oh, those evil corporations, oh, those evil politicians. Every time we throw out a banana peel or an onion skin or a rotten tomato, if we throw it at somebody, we are contributing to the third largest source of greenhouse gas emissions, right? And the solutions, large scale and small scale biodigesters, according to the ranking in Paul Hawkins' book that we use as our seminal textbook in our climate course, is biodigesters number 30 for large scale, number 64 for small scale. You can see a various small scale digesters. The one that we developed in Egypt, which is what was behind me in the image when I first came on, that was the pyramids. In Egypt, living in the slums back 12, 13, 14 years ago for 3 years, in the slums of Cairo, in the oldest part of old Cairo, people are deprived of cooking fuel and of water and of certainly hot water and electricity. And when I deliberately moved into that community in order to start working on this problem by deliberately self-depriving myself, I found that the neighborhood had all the acumen to build the solutions, but they didn't have things that I had, like access to a credit card and a passport and textbooks and good internet access. And all I had to do was go around the world, because I could travel as a graduate student, and meet with people and visit solutions, and then bring them back to Cairo, to the slums, and say to the local welder and the local glass maker and the local coppersmith, hey, can we build this? And they'd say, why not? If you're willing to take on the risk by paying for it, and if it breaks, that's on you, we'll build anything. And they made their roof spaces available. And then over time, as you can see from this graphic here, we moved them everywhere we went in the world. And this one up on top here, the Puxin Chinese community scale cement biodigester, concrete digester that's in our video game making and in real life here. And then the IBC tanks were ones we could build anywhere out of anything. And then there's this Israeli home biogas system that we've been taking all over the world in a box, and it's made by a company and sets up in an hour. So there's really no excuse, because even if you're using, like my wife here in Palestine, using a pickle barrel to make a biodigester, filling up these inner tubes, and she was able to cook her egg or tea every morning in her dormitory when she was studying in Israel. And then she'd go back to Palestine and introduce it to her friends like Suleiman here. And everybody goes, oh, well, I can make this flame out of yesterday's kitchen garbage and my toilet waste as well. And then here's me with Chris Lindstrom, whose father invented the Clivus mulching composting toilet, Abby Rockefeller's son. And there we are on their farm up in New York, filling biogas bags to take to Harvard and MIT to do demonstrations. We'd stop off at his house, fill up a bag, drive it up to Massachusetts, and then demonstrate. And there I am in Turkey demonstrating the biodigester. But I've had this great privilege to go all over the world demonstrating how easy it is using local materials that anybody can do to build these domestic dragons. And here's one here on the property where I live right now, just north of University of South Florida. And you can see the dragon's head that a high school student from Blake High School in the inner city made. It breathes fire at night. I guess Joe Tankersley put this at the end of his book as a scene from the future. If you read his book, Reimagining Tomorrow, you have this young woman who's dreaming of a better future, and it ends with a kiss under the dragon breathing fire at night. Well, he got it, he said, from this actual dragon that we built with our students. And there's a Walmart queen size mattress holding the gas that my wife and I use to cook every day for about 2 hours for every bucket of food waste that we put in. So there's really nothing that one can't achieve. And there we are at our wedding, my wife there, who's from a Palestinian village, and some of our students dressed up as pirates. And there we are lighting it so we can kiss under the flame of the dragon, made from food waste and toilet waste. And now that we have a new baby, his diapers, cloth diapers, and people go, what do you do when you change the diaper? Well, you go, hey, I got more inoculant for my biodigester. So all the toilet waste that we have and all the food waste that we have goes into either these concrete digesters, or they go into these plastic tanks that we've built. It's so simple. You can build the plastic tank in 1.5 hours to 2 hours for less than $200. You can put a bucket of food waste a day in there. The concrete ones cost about $5,000 and go up in 5 days. And you can take 2 oil drum filled with food waste and toilet waste per day and cook for 24 hours with them. It's the simplest of all solutions. And so I guess what I see that makes sense, like Václav Havel said, is I see the solution spaces. They all make sense to me. The stuff that we see, zombies or nuclear disasters, those are the stuff of nightmares, but they're not as compelling when you wake up as the real, is what I've found. And my students love to mine dystopia to give themselves game challenges, like Bernard Suits said in his book, Games, Life, and Utopia, called The Grasshopper, about Aesop's fable. So if you ever read The Grasshopper, Games, Life, and Utopia, Bernard Suits, the author, says, games give us challenges to overcome that are not efficient, are difficult, and can sometimes seem painful, but that's what makes the game fun. When we get out of the game, we don't want to do stuff that's inefficient and stupid. And I guess I'll end by saying that pyramid behind me from this trip to look at our biodigesters and build more in Egypt, because we go there as often as we can, this is not a failed civilization. Egyptian civilization and Maya civilization, Aztec civilization, Cambodian civilization, they didn't collapse, they changed. The people were still there. The Maya people are, I've worked near Tikal, and we've done projects near Tikal, and the Maya, Itza and Maya Quiche friends of ours say, we didn't go away, we're still here. We just decided that it wasn't efficient to do grain agriculture and chop down our forests, so we're trying to revive the use of breadnut. The idea is this civilization is not going to collapse. What hopefully will dissolve is this obsession with making dystopias real, and a comfort level once the people on top, and that's us in the university world, we're giving grades for the wrong things. If we say you are free to create utopia, I've noticed that all of our students rise to the occasion.
Oh, that's so super inspiring. That is just so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. That is just, it's really, really exciting to think about.
It is. It really is. Biodigesters.
And so simple.
Right.
That's what I've been, for 20 years, I've been going into the schools and I've been saying, let's just make it simple. If we make it simple, everybody will want to do it. And so this is great. I'd love to talk to you further after the show too, to see if we can help bring this to my little town.
And I love that expression, solar plexus of the nexus.
Yeah, solar plexus. I know, that's so
It's the
cool.
literal guts of the system. I mean, it is guts. It starts on your baby's diaper waste or your human waste, and then from there you put everything else in. Couldn't be easier.
That's great. Wow. So you want to bring in our next guest, Karen?
I'd be honored. We have Savannah Turner, who is the PhD student specializing in extension education at the University of Florida. And she is currently adapting the Sustainable Floridians discussion to action program to develop youth and adults working with those youth to realize their full potential. Wow, Savannah, that's awesome. It's so great. Becoming an effective, contributing citizen through participation in research-based non-formal, hands-on educational experiences. Wow, Savannah, this is amazing. Thank you so much for being here. I can't wait to hear more about this. Can you tell us a little bit about the Sustainable Floridians Discussion to Action program?
Yes, thank you for having me on the show today. It's an honor to be here with everyone else. So the Sustainable Floridian program was something that I actually didn't know about when I first got hired. I was a 4-H youth development agent in Jacksonville, Florida. I was doing extension work there for the past 3 years before I became a PhD student. And during that time, I actually worked with my master's online at the University of South Florida. TH and I took some of his classes, so I can attest to the fact that those classes, you do a lot more, and it really is empowering and exciting. And it actually kind of sparked some thoughts about what I was seeing with youth curriculum in 4-H, being in schools and working. And I kind of stumbled along with the Sustainable Floridian curriculum when I went to a conference and met with Jennison that Sue spoke of earlier. And this program is designed to help teach adults about how to reduce resource consumption, save money, become part of like a transition into a more environmentally, socially, economically friendly future. And so it's a really exciting program. It's really big in South Florida. And working with Jennison, I said, hey, do you think that maybe I could create a youth version of this? Because at the time, and I think still currently, National 4-H doesn't have a curriculum that specifically focuses on sustainability and the few nexus. What it focuses on is them individually in silos, rather than showing how they're actually working together and interconnected. And she's like, yeah, sure. So for my final project for my master's, I worked on this curriculum. And I wanted to make sure that it was going to be designed as an adult guide to be able to teach youth, because I think that a lot of times adults get very intimidated by a subject they're not really familiar with. And so I wanted to make sure that I created something where they felt comfortable and had enough knowledge in it for them to feel like they can move forward and actually teach youth. So that was, the kind of, seed idea from the beginning. And it pairs really well the way that I designed it with the Sustainable Floridian curriculum, because I kind of mirrored the way that the lessons work and how they build on each other. So the first one is like, what is sustainability is the first lesson. And its course is going to be geared more towards youth. So it's, I think grades 4 to 5 to 6-ish is where I was trying to shoot, because that's kind of where kids are really starting to get curious, excited, and they're to a point where they feel like they can almost move forward with making more changes in their community. And so I felt that was a really good age to kind of, have them start looking into these things. So each lesson builds, so you have sustainability as the first introduction to it, and the curriculum provides everything an adult would need to even understand it themselves. And then the next one is talking about, the food system. Then the next one is water conservation, but then there's pieces that tie back into the food system lesson. And then as it cycles through and talks about all these things, towards the end, it's almost like a call to action. So I created and embedded a piece at the end that talks about how youth can feel empowered to go out and make these changes in their community, which is similar to the way the Sustainable Floridian is set up, where it's like, hey, you might want to recycle, but maybe create part of your HOA that might be a requirement to recycle or something like that. So I wanted to mirror that idea on the youth side and make sure that the adults feel like they can have enough knowledge to empower these youth to want to move forward. And that's kind of part of that intergenerational collaboration, is that, that exchange of ideas between the experiences of adults and youth and what they're both seeing on either side, just like we've had discussions in this, show already, is this dooming, looming thing that's happening and how youth are perceiving the future of the world. Well, adults can almost have some influence in how, children and adults or youth are seeing that. And so this curriculum kind of makes it look more like, hey, we do have some issues, but you have the power to make changes. Like, we want to make sure you feel like you can do this. And that's important for both sides, because I've seen in youth development work with 4-H, even, youth teach adults all the time. And so that, collaboration and interconnectedness between generations is really important. I think to move forward, to be able to, make motions in sustainability and all. So that's kind of where that's at. Currently, I have put together a team of different agents at the University of Florida that are helping me, develop the curriculum further so we can actually release it out into the world and everyone can use it. We're piloting it virtually this summer, just given our situation currently, but we're going to have some other pieces that are going to be involved. So my hope is that by the end of the year, it'll be live and available to everyone to use. But this pilot is definitely going to help us see how it's working and how we can move forward with it.
It really sounds fascinating, and of course, such a really easy way to bring the generations together for the common good, and really uniting the elders with the youth for the love of our planet. It makes so much sense, and thank you so much for taking the time to really bring this into our world, because all of you are such an inspiration. To know that this is happening right now is so exciting for me, because I've been working on this for 20 years in the schools, and to see it really coming into fruition and watching it, hearing about all of what you already have accomplished, I just want to help amplify any way I can. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me and see if there's ways that I use all social media to help raise the levels of compassion, kindness, gratitude, joy, love, and peace on earth, to talk about the sustainable goals. So reach out to me and let me know if I can help. And Rick, you want to bring in our last guest?
Definitely. Duncan Cabino is an avid entrepreneur, software developer, and professional development consultant. He founded Gainesville Dev Academy to empower North Central Florida's technical workforce with the skills necessary to compete on a global scale. Welcome to the Welcome to We show, Duncan.
Thanks, Rick. Thank you, everybody. So I kind of feel like the odd person out here, because you kind of wonder, what does software development have to do with climate change? And I'll get into that in a little bit. But we started Gainesville Dev Academy out of a need that we found, where there was a problem where we didn't have enough talent in the town, and we wanted to help make an affordable, easy approach for pretty much anybody. A layperson could learn how to become a software developer. And what you find in software development, it really taps into critical thinking and other analytical parts of your brain. And I personally challenge anybody, I don't care what your skill level is, that you can become a software developer. And actually, at the end of the day, I came to the conclusion that we don't teach you how to become a software developer. We teach you how to become a learner, so that you can understand how to solve things on your own, basically. As in, I don't want you to come back to me. You should be able to figure this out going forward. I'll just teach you how to think better about doing this. So I just start off by saying that it's very hard to find a direct link between climate change or any environmental issues and software development. And software is more of a, as we know it, as a virtualized area, right? It's something that's not there. We can't see it, as opposed to climate and environmental issues are actually based on the physical world. We do know that there's climate crisis and issues, and otherwise, why else would be on here talking about it, right? As with the problems, with all problems, it takes a while for us to come up with the solution. And I believe it took scientists almost 40 years to actually finally determine that we do have a climate issue and that we need to work on it. I'm also, as Rick mentioned, an avid entrepreneur. And one of the things about being an entrepreneur is there's a tendency to be very innovative and always looking for new solutions, but it's always based on what is a problem. And I usually try and get most of my students to think on a global scale, that what is the problem and how can it impact people on a global scale? Yes, of course, majority of kids just want to build video games and make tons of money, but there's other ways that you can also impact. So with the proliferation of technology and software development, to me, it is imperative that we use the help of these resources to help define, analyze, and hopefully resolve existing problems, including climate change. We're now able to find software systems to enable researchers to a better way to understand, analyze the issues, and eventually provide some intelligent and systematic services and decision supporting tools for governing agency and others to manage a process, a solution. Today, there's environmental software products that emerge on a daily basis. These include GIS, which is Geographical Information Systems, decision support systems, data modeling and stats software, data acquisition software, and web information systems. All these are tools that can be used from a software development perspective to help, disseminate information, analyze information, and also come up with solutions. So as you can see, software is well merged into a solution building processes. Software basically provides a critical structure that supports a scientific study of climate change and the use of that science by society. And software allows us to process vast amounts of geoscientific data to simulate Earth system processes, to assess the implications, explore possible policy responses. Software development models allow scientists, activists, and policymakers to share data, explore scenarios, and validate a lot of assumptions. Most of these products are designed for engineers, unfortunately, and there are very few that exist for non-professionals. But that doesn't mean that a non-professional can't participate, right? As TH just alluded to and showed us, was a good example was his website that basically has all kinds of information. I think the number one key for someone in order to learn more is to have a lot of information provided to them. So having a website, that's software development in its own way, where someone is able to disseminate information, which helps you as a consumer make better decisions by information. Again, going back to teaching you how to learn as opposed to just being a regular consumer as well. So most of these, like I say, most of the products are designed for engineers and non-professionals, but there are many ways to involve non-professionals, and examples include providing consumers with better information on what products to purchase and how to use these products more effectively to reduce environmental impact. In this case, as a software developer, there's a lot of companies that provide a lot of data that I, as a software developer, consume and basically put into a more digestible format by pulling in what's known as APIs, which is a way that you pull in information from another organization or another system, and then you can put this information together in a more readable and more consumable version for a regular layperson. And so software development allows you to do that. One item that I think is easily accessible to most consumers today is IoT, which is the Internet of Things. Internet of Things it's a portable device that can be used for all kinds of stuff. And I know in Gainesville, we have several deployed throughout the city that collect all kinds of, has sensor data, basically. It collects all kind of environmental stuff and information out there. What this allows you to actually do is actually get very spatial and temporal data that's very, very specific to your area so that you can know how you can make an impact in your own community. Some of the systems that I feel do a good job to inform and educate that are all based on software development include Images of Change by NASA. They show how much of an environment has changed in a relatively short time. And they actually have images that allow you to see what the world looked like, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago as compared to now. It's quite dramatic if you've never seen it. By the way, these are all online also, as well as free mobile apps. So that's Images of Change. Skeptical Science. You really have to dig far before these statements or background references don't quite ring true, but it's often frustrating and clear why this might be. This is where Skeptical Science app comes in. Pick the appropriate claim from the menu, and it'll give you scientific explanation and refutation. Green Tips, another one, is a reasonable comprehensive list of tips on how to save energy, money, and your local economy. Some have been around for ages, such as taking a shower rather than a bath, eat locally produced fruit and vegetables, start composting, or some might even seem obvious, but there are others that are more thought-provoking as well. All put together by some software developer that decided that there's a way to put all these systems together in order to make it more digestible by a regular consumer and what you can do to help out. So the problem with climate change is that time is not on our side, and mankind has to find and implement solutions relatively fast. I personally believe that the solution to that is what we're now seeing a lot more of is data science and artificial intelligence. And I'll give you almost like a simulation of how life has transformed, if I may. It started off where people essentially all believed in religion as the one way to solve things, right? So for example, if I got sick, we as a village, we came together and we prayed over you, and hopefully you got better. Eventually, it changed into a wise person, a wise doctor, shaman in the village, and that shaman basically was the one that's been the oldest, has seen a lot of things and found out how people solve them and so on and so forth. And everybody went to that person. Life goes on, simulation changes. Now we have actual medical doctors that go in a hospital that have studied this stuff and basically have understood what makes you sick. But at the same time, medicine as it is called practicing for the sheer fact that you're still trying to figure out what's wrong and how best to solve it. Most remedies come from basically a trial and error and finally find something that works, right? So what evolves after that is data and the amount of data that we've collected. So these doctors have been collecting all this data. This data is now simulated into systems, and those systems can now tell you without a doubt you have the flu, you have this. And this is what we need to do with all the information we get from all these different ways that I mentioned, such as the Internet of Things sensors. It could be just from people in their neighborhoods picking up and gathering information about changes they see in the environment. Maybe you incorporate that and merge in with enterprise systems that scientists are using this research data, and basically you take that information and turn it into something that I guess, like I said, helps you with decision making from a governance level all the way to just personal level as well. So in order to address the climate issues, researchers, engineers, policymakers, and educators from many different disciplines need to come to the table and ask what they can contribute in order to solve this problem. And I personally feel that software developers stand in the back as a resource that helps take all this and make it easier. In fact, I basically consider software developers to be, and I might offend some people with this, lazy people, because they believe in working smart and not working hard. And so I will always find the quickest solution to a problem if I can, by taking as much data as possible and turn it into this neural system that basically can think for itself and come up with solutions. So that's where I feel software development plays somewhat of a role in helping folks. You don't have to necessarily be a software developer. But like I said, software development doesn't have to be you writing an application. Building a website to me is as simple as you can as building software development. And then you can build sites just like TH just mentioned, and others that exist out there that are very helpful, I mean, to disseminate information.
Wow. I could relate to so many things that you were talking about. It's amazing. When I was in high school, get this, in high school in a long time ago, in the 60s, we were given a way to program a computer then, and they just had these mainframes at that point, and we learned Fortran in high school, which stands for Formula Translation, and it was so wonderful. I just ate it up. I eventually became a math teacher from all of that. But I mean, in high school, it really helps you to think through things, and like you said, arrive at the most efficient way to solve a problem. And I remember in the 80s, I got my first computer, which was a TRS-80 Radio Shack computer, and it came with the manual for the computer. What also showed you how to program in BASIC. So anybody who just bought a computer from Radio Shack could learn how to program in BASIC, and I did. I wrote about 30 programs. I had all these things going on, and it really helps you to analyze, like you were saying, and so I think that's really great to use that with kids and give them that opportunity to cut corners and let the computer do the work.
That's right. I'll add this. I worked for Florida Department of Agriculture for 18 years. And while there, as a programmer, I had the opportunity to go out with inspectors constantly, and on many occasions, I participate in a lot of emergency programs for pest management and so on and so forth, and noticed that they used chemicals to treat a lot of the stuff that we did out there. A lot of it was, safe stuff, but at the same time, I prefer, if we all did the right thing, we probably won't have these issues, we won't be having these discussions, but also chemicals, no matter what kind they are, they still have some accumulative effect over time. And so I noticed that we were spraying for fruit flies in a particular emergency program. And this had nothing to do with my job, but I completely took it out of my time to build a system that allowed you to track where every single person sprayed and how much they sprayed. And one of the concerns was it hitting water bodies and so on and so forth. But again, this just goes back to critical thinking, is that as you start to develop the skills on how to think critically or to think rationally, you tend to have a different way of looking at life. And you do, by the way, you do have to balance that, because everything can't be rational. When my wife was pregnant and we were getting ready to have a baby, I completely wrote a flow chart that kind of outlined every step of what would happen if the baby is born before midnight. Here's what will happen. You do have to balance it.
A do loop, I get it. So what you were talking about with the spraying reminded me of contact tracing. That's exactly what people are doing now, right? With the virus, right? Checking, who did what, when, and where'd you come into contact. Another thing you mentioned was about the NASA images. So I don't know if you have ever heard of the group called Bella Gaia, but they are friends of mine, especially the keyboard player. It's an extraordinary group. Imagine 3 musicians with performing live, and the backdrop is a giant screen showing NASA images, and it's basically a planetary journey using NASA images that are first, you see the images from the satellite point of view, or from the space station. But then it goes into all of these analytical ways of representing the globe, like with, there was one image which showed the amount of texting in different parts of the globe. So you see these lights of places where people are texting on the planet, and you just see the planet, but these lights light up in various places like New York and Los Angeles, and
And like Hans Rosling's data visualization talks, right? The Swedish statistician, yeah.
Exactly. So anyway, that's really great. Thank you, Duncan. So and I think one of the themes that we've all been talking about is what people can do when they come together to create a better world. And that maybe can lead us into our roundtable, to discuss what can we do together that we can't do on our own, that can help us to have a more sustainable planet. What do you think, Sue?
Well, I'm just really interested in the idea of what the Earth Charter says is integrating into formal education and lifelong learning the knowledge, values, and skills needed for a sustainable way of life. And so our goal at the Climate Collaboratory is to bring people like all of you together to provide all, especially children and youth, with educational opportunities that empower them to contribute actively to sustainable development. And so what I'm really interested in is seeing how the different universities and the 4-H club and some of the programs that you work with, Duncan, how we can work together to expand the knowledge and create collaborations among, different groups working together and putting it in the context of creating a sustainable future for all. So I'll be contacting each of you, and we're going to put together some kind of action plan for September and plant lots of seed ideas that other people may want to pick up. And Duncan, maybe you'll help us with that entrepreneurial spirit that we so need at this time.
I'll just say this, that your target is great target with youth as one of those, but a big part would be getting them to be engaged. We all know that the phrase, it takes 21 days to form a habit. And so if you start off by creating stuff that they can get actively engaged, not just book material, actually physically getting out there and doing that, you can still incorporate technology, like I said, which could be, record your findings on your phone and so on and so forth, is the best way. I mean, I've watched, I was big into hydroponics, and I watch kids actually enjoy vegetables just because they grew them themselves, so getting involved is the key.
Yeah, if I may add something to that, because I think that two observations. One is, one of the reasons why we do the tree plantings in my literature of resilience course is, okay, so we're reading Aldo Leopold, we're reading John Muir, we're reading Henry David Thoreau, we're reading Arnie Nace, other names you may not have heard of, Natasha Myers, who's a brilliant plant studies scholar at York University, somebody to watch out for. She's going to go big. Planting the trees is not a supplement to the classroom discussion. It's an extension of the classroom discussion into real action. And, I can't help it. I'm a college professor, so I end up giving little mini lectures as I run from student to student working on the trees. We talk about this, and I make the simple point that digging the hole in the ground, putting the tree in. Of course, these are trees that we don't just go to a garden store and buy a bunch of trees. This is all done under very precise, careful supervision by the arborist to make sure that the trees are perfectly sited for the location. We talk to them about why different species work in different places, solve different problems. But I always talk to them about the fact that the trees that we plant will live 200 or 300 or maybe 400 years. And that what they do is a bond with the future. And that what they do is something that materially engages the conversation that we're having about John Muir. Jean Genot, who's a very important French author, wrote a wonderful book called The Man Who Planted Trees, which is a text that we read in class. We talk to them about that. And yeah, we talk about the science of why we're sequestering carbon and why we're planting trees, and we're trying to increase forest canopy in Gainesville. But it's actually getting their hands dirty. It's actually sort of touching the object. It's actually engaged in a material practice that embodies the theory. And really, it's thrilling to see them do that. So that's the first thing. The second thing, and I'll make this much more quickly, much more quickly, but it's on what Sue said about trying to establish across a wide, as I read what Sue is saying, a wide variety of disciplines and institutions and units within the institutions. TH can tell us, Savannah can tell us, a major research university like UF silos the different sections, and you don't know what the brilliant young assistant professor who was just hired in the next building, you don't know what she's doing. You don't know, right? And so you have to find out. And yeah, there are mechanisms for paying attention, but you don't have time to read every news feed from the university to find out what smart young whippersnapper has been brought on and is going to be a leading figure, and you really want to work with her or him. You have to go and knock on doors. I mean, one of the things I take some pride in with ICC, and as I said, we've collaborated with, I think, almost 30 to 40 units on campus, is that came from literally cold calls, sending an email to a person, looking them up and showing up and saying, okay, you're a geologist and I'm an English professor, and I really want you to come and be part of a talk about the fiction that describes the future of climate. And I had colleagues who were skeptical of the dimension of the humanities, its contribution to this conversation, but I had many more colleagues who were not. I had many more colleagues who were not, and who were aching to have a kind of genuinely radical interdisciplinary conversation. Not interdisciplinary in the way that we so often make it, where I don't mean, look, my colleagues are brilliant. My physical scientists colleagues, engineering colleagues, agricultural sciences colleagues, they're brilliant, they're wonderful, doing amazing work. We talk interdisciplinarity in the university, and what we mean is like the biochemist is talking to the physical chemist. The plant pathologist is talking to some guy from forestry who plants trees. Okay, that's important, but it's not interdisciplinary. What we do in ICC is we get the religion scholar to talk to the geologist. We get the science fiction author to talk to the musicologist. We get the poet to talk to the environmentalist. And the incongruities of their language and their worldviews, it doesn't always work. I mean, sometimes they shoot past each other, but even that's interesting for the audience, right, is to watch that. But this is how you do two things. You genuinely create a dialogue that didn't exist before, and you bring people to the event, members of the public, students, your colleagues, who wouldn't have come otherwise. Again, I have nothing but the deepest respect for my colleagues in the physical sciences, but I've said it on meetings where they'll say, we'll put on a brilliant slideshow and a talk about some new cutting edge research in climate change, and we'll get basically 25 people to come, and they'll be mostly grad students from the department. And my answer is, you're doing it wrong. We put on an event, we get 75, 100, 200 people come. And they come because they know that a variety of positions is welcome. They know that a variety, not of points of view about the reality of what's happening. We don't tend to get many climate denialists, but a conversation where this, again, I'm speaking from within the university, a psychology major wants to be at that talk. A music major wants to be at that talk. A religion major wants to be at that talk. And a geology major, and an architect, and somebody who's studying entomology, and somebody who's studying software design. They want to be at that talk because they know that they will learn something from the variety of points of views and the variety of languages that are represented there. And they also know that it won't be shot at the lowest common denominator. It'll be shot at a very high level of conversation and reasoning, but that it won't be so hyper specialized in terms of the technical discourse of the field that they won't know how to speak that language. It won't make sense to them. And I think that's very important.
Yep, definitely. And what you're talking about is one of the mottos of We the World. What do? We inspire, inform, and involve.
Right.
3 I's that make a we.
Right.
So, and it's really with the same goal. In other words, people aren't all ready to take action right away. So, but they might be interested in coming to an event just because of the arts that are displayed there, or the musical performance or something under a certain theme. And then once they're there, then they become part of the conversation, and maybe then they want to find out more about what's going on. So they get informed, they find out where they can find out more information. And then that might lead them to then say, well, okay, I don't want to just read about this. I want to take action. I want to do something. So the 3 I's: inspire, inform, and involve.
Can I just say, the night that the anti-science climate hoax era began, election night of 2016, I was building a biodigester on a cruise ship at Summit at Sea, and we had people like John Scully from Apple and Google's George Schmidt, and Aaron Brockovich, the activist, was there. And in the morning, when we woke up to the realization of the era we had just suddenly got blundered into, and we were out at sea, and we built biodigesters and hydroponics and aquaponics and bicycle generators up on the deck to show the interdisciplinary participants at this Summit at Sea what a utopia might look like, this floating utopia. It was joked, well, we should just stay out at sea and never come back, because now we could. But LeVar Burton from Reading Rainbow and of course Star Trek, LeVar was there, and at the bar that night when we'd hugged and talked about educational missions, the next day he had a small session for us on the failure of education. And as a professor, I raised my hand and I said, guilty as charged, though not intending to. I have done my fair share of disempowering people. We always talk about empowering students and doing group work and interdisciplinary collaboration. But I realized that the system that we were beholden to and fearful that we'd lose our jobs or we might get bad ratings made us do things that actively disengaged students from each other, from the content, from the co-curricular synergies that could have happened. And I bowed my head at shame that day. And LeVar was really nice about it. We talked about how, you know, in Star Trek, we would never get to the Star Trek universe if we continued to teach kids the way that we're doing it, all the way up through graduate school. And Savannah, you know it well, and the struggles to try to make, even with the freedoms we had at graduate level, to make it relevant. Even with the Sustainability Superheroes program we have that the Coca-Cola Foundation gives a lot of money to train teachers in Hillsborough and Pasco that our students participate in, we are, in my mind, we have got to do the Biospherics Challenge, the Star Trek Spaceship Challenge. You've got to do what I did in grad school. I thank my professor for trusting me, and go and say, I'm going to live without and build my way back to a good civilization. And the only school I know that do it is two. One is Barefoot College in Rajasthan, India, with Roy Bunker and the women that he trains from all over the world. And he wouldn't allow me to work for him because he said, you went to Ivy League schools, you've been poisoned by the system. I love you, man, but you've got to go back and decompress and figure out where your civilization went wrong, because just your patriarchal energy, as much as you've tried to fight it, it's still in you. So he was wonderful. But then there's a place called Heart Village, which is here in Florida, where they train missionaries. And we went there to build digesters and systems there. But their first semester, the first third, the students have to live with nothing. They have to fetch water. They have to use candlelight. They have to live with deprivation. And then if they pass that test, that's their exam, they move on to being able to use the biodigester, the solar hot water, the photovoltaic power, the wind power that they've learned to build. And only in the end, when they're taking final exams for the other programs that they're in, do they get to move into a dormitory where that's supplied by civilization with a knowledge of critiquing the ease of this push button. And so I'd submit that if we're going to get anywhere with this imminent and actually, what's the word for extant right now, climate crisis, we've got to live in that dystopian future that can be made utopian from the beginning of kindergarten. Kids have to say, well, what are you doing with your poop? I'm sorry, it can't leave this biosphere. When you go to the toilet here at school, it can't leave the property. And your food waste can't leave the property. And the plastic you bring in. And my wife and I have strived at the Rosebud Continuum Education Center where we live, living in this 40-foot RV with our new baby, 3 years off the grid. We have not thrown out the garbage in 3 years because we don't believe in garbage. And it's stacking up in the back there. And I have to sort it and clean it and decide, what am I going to use? Now I'm turning plastic into oil that we're using to run a weed whacker, and I'm making signs out of recycled plastic with our students. Wow. Savannah knows that. But this journey of clawing your way to sustainability is really tough, and we don't have enough people. We literally, I would love it for all you come and camp out here, you know, and make it happen, because here's what the crux of it is. Individuals, we can be as righteous as we want, and we will stumble right back into bad practice, because it's really hard if you don't have the critical mass of people and technologies and infrastructure. So we can dream about it, but boy, when you, as you all know, when you get your hands dirty, like try keeping some of those trees alive, right, Terry?
Yeah.
I mean,
No, one of the lectures that we give the students when we put the trees in is we say, okay, so you get to spend all Saturday morning planting trees, and it's a wonderful moving experience. Understand that the arborist, it will come back now 3 days a week for the next maybe 5 or 6 weeks, depending on the season, to water the tree to make sure it's okay. And then at least once a month for the next 6 months. This is an investment in time and space beyond what we've done today. We're teaching you to do it so you can do it at home, and then go to your, if you are lucky enough to have a yard, many of these students live in apartments, of course, but you know, if you have a yard, plant a tree and then attend to it on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, and see what that is.
It's a great life lesson. And how about you, Savannah? Any thoughts about all of these as we come to the end of our.
Yeah,
Okay.
actually, so a lot of good points. I think that one thing that to give you guys a little hope maybe, that I'm in the agricultural education and communications department. And so that's more specifically geared towards like social sciences. And one of the grad students, a PhD student in our department, is actually interested at looking at the university system and why we're all siloed and how we can almost apply a systems level thinking to help foster and create more collaboration with faculty members in different departments. So hopefully that will work out. She's super excited. We've actually had a lot of conversations just because my time at USF, I learned a lot about that level of thinking. So I just wanted to, you know, kind of throw that out there saying social scientists are also tackling these ideas of the system level approach and how can we, you know, disseminate it from that larger level, because we have a lot of individuals that feel very passionate about these subjects, but there's a disconnect there. And that kind of leads me into this other idea that cooperative extension is supposed to be the outreach arm of a land-grant university. And so that's where kind of more or less my research is coming into play, is how can we use some level of behavior change and knowledge to be able to take that and use the research at the University of Florida to put it through extension education to help disseminate it out to the general public. Because we do that, you know, everything that we're going to be teaching in extension is going to be research-based and, you know, informal, non-formal education. But I think that we have some ways that we can improve and expand on these ideas that we've all been discussing. Especially my interest is lying more with sustainability and food systems specifically. But that's kind of where, you know, a lot of us are thinking, how can we observe what's happening and then, you know, make those behavior changes and help people realize that these are things that you can do at home, you can do in your community, and, you know, make sure that they kind of have it. It's almost a different way to think. It is habit forming for sure. Like you have to do that, but understanding why some people in some communities are really passionate and do it, like all of us, but then other people are like, oh, that's not really a priority. So how do we reach out to those people and pull them in and say, no, this is important. This is what we should be doing. And my last point, Duncan mentioned a while back about, you know, kids using hydroponics and kids doing things physically. And I think that 4-H youth development, although I'm not involved now, I think that that's a great way to be able to get a lot of this information out to the youth, because 4-H is embedded in schools and they work a lot with after school programs and they work in the communities as well. So it's a lot of non-formal education that youth's receiving. So it's not book work, it's very hands-on learning. Our approach is do, reflect, apply. So you do activity, you reflect on activity. How can you expand that activity and apply it further out from what you just learned? And so that's really important. And I think that, you know, 4-H is part of the extension outreach. And so I think that's important that, you know, that's another component to this, is that they're understanding and being able to take this stuff to action and actually physically get outside and do it, you know, or talk to, you know, even legislators or, you know, lobbyists like that. 4-H actually has a program where they can do that. And so there's different ways that I think we can take this whole idea of creating, you know, behavior changes from a social science perspective to kind of ingrain with all these technical sciences to move forward for youth, but also adults, and then help those be integrated together.
Yeah. And Sue, you kind of put it all together. And how could people connect with all the different things that you're working on with the Climate Collaboratory? Well,
I am, probably easiest is just my email is Sue Blythe, SUEBLYTHE @we.net.
All right. And you want to give the web address for the climate? I think I know. The easiest one is we.net/climate, right?
Yes.
So that's probably the easiest one to tap into. And any of our guests, would you like to give a place where people can connect with you to collaborate or know more about your work? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to. I'm going to just very briefly put up the website here for Can you see that scrolling window with imagining climate change?
Yep.
So if someone just searches for imagining climate change, or even just climate change at UF, you can find our website and find out the various events that we have, the speakers that we have. There's some of the events are videotaped. You can see what's coming. You can see the images from our tree planting experiments here. So that's imagining climate change. Just look it up. It's easy to find on the internet, and I think that people that want to know more about what we do want to get on a mailing list. We have a mailing list. They can be notified of events that are coming up. We were kind of had our, I'm trying to find a pleasant metaphor to say this. We kind of knocked back by the COVID-19 crisis. We had several events in the spring. We had to cancel some things that are scheduled for the fall that we've had to postpone temporarily. We continue to plan for events next year and continue to plan for the community outreach stuff. Savannah, we were about to start on a project to work with local high school. All that had to be put aside for the interest of obviously the well-being of these young people. So we hope to resume all those activities in the coming year, as well as continue the more academic university stuff that we're doing. We're trying to straddle those two worlds. But if you go to the ICC website, you can find out about what's happening. You can see what's been done in the past to get a sense of what it is that we do and the kinds of people that we brought, or the kinds of conversations that we have. And that's probably your best introduction to the aims and the achievements of the group.
Okay, that's great. And TH, do you have a place?
I sure do. I sure do. And I appreciate, thank you, Duncan, the shout out to the web presences we've created. Now, what I'd like to do in the age of COVID is let me share my screen for just 1 second so you can see where I would direct you to. I would direct you to my Roblox world that we're creating. This is Innoventor 2020 Sustainability Studio, and it's really deep under construction, so it's got a lot of flaws because I'm no programmer, Duncan. I'm learning Lua by the seat of my pants, trying my best, but I am jumping in, like you said, because it is logical. And I've created, and I don't know if you can see, when I click on this, do you see the actual screen of the world? Yeah. So that dragon, there it is there, and there's that Walmart mattress and the InSinkerator. Now students can play our sustainability, and we're turning, this is the actual real property I live on, but in cartoon fashion. We have all these solar panels. We have the windmill, although it rarely turns, and we have the permaculture gardens and the composting toilets. But I would love to have everybody meet in game and then help me build the game, because I don't really know what I'm doing, and I'm just stumbling along trying to add it, and then add your neighborhood to the map, because I created a portal where you can now jump in and go to USF, to the classroom that I've built, to the Patel. I've got a place that goes to my kids' house in Germany to see their solar panels. So I'm taking real places and inviting students and participants, build your neighborhood, your world, the way you'd like it to be, the way it is, the way it should be, the utopian and dystopian sides, and then let's play our way to sustainability. That's the goal here. And as you can see, you can even get in the little solar powered, and this is real, this exists on property right now, and drive around. So I think that even though we can't visit each other, there's a lot that we can do. And let me just stop screen sharing here for you.
Exactly. And how about you, Duncan? Is there a place for where people can connect with you to know more about what you're doing and even support your work?
Certainly. First of all, congratulations, TH. That was pretty impressive for what you built so far. Keep it up. GainesvilleDevAcademy.com. That's DEV. It's just short for development. So Gainesville Dev Academy is where you can find us. And then you can email me through there. My email is just Duncan@GainesvilleDevAcademy.com. I did want to add this one thing as we're thinking about how do you get people to collaborate and work together en masse. I often get invited to University of Florida's College of Engineering to talk to the engineering fellows. And basically, I think they bring me on to challenge the students to think beyond the academic stuff, like the real world stuff. And so their solutions are usually very myopic, and I try to get them to think bigger than that. And sometimes it doesn't have to do with technology. It could be simple stuff that you can do there's a tendency for people to always go to the implementation before working through the problem and kind of gradually get towards it. Sometimes the solution is as easy as a spreadsheet and not writing an application for it. And I'll give you a good example is in terms of collaboration, which I still have for the life of me not figured out how they did this. In 2019, Ethiopia planted 350 million trees in 12 hours. How is that possible for them to reach out to 23 million people that participated in that in one day? So look at models that exist out there in third world countries and other places and try and figure out how to reverse engineer that and see if there's something that we can learn from it as well.
Sounds great. And Savannah, is there a way that people can connect with you, learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a fancy website or anything. I'm still a student, so haven't quite got that developed yet. But you can reach me if you just Google UF's website and just look up directory. You can find me, Savannah Turner, or my email address is just sturner@ufl.edu. I am still working on that curriculum. I do have a team already, so hopefully once that's available for public release, I'll be emailing all of you to have it so that way you can disseminate it. As far as my own personal research, if anyone's interested in looking at the social science aspect of all of these issues or has any ideas on behavior changes, I'm all for it. I'm definitely at that point. I'm only my third semester of my PhD, so all ideas are welcome.
That's great. That's fabulous. And Karen, how about you and all the amazing work that you're doing? How do people connect with you?
Well, you know, the best way to people get to connect with me is at globalkindnesstv.org. And like I said, anything that I can do to help this panel, just feel free to reach out to me. I have several broadcasts that I do online that we have a show that's called What Else is Possible that I would love to feature you guys on, because you are definitely doing what else is possible in our world. So I'm also the coordinator for the We Women's theme. And you can contact me directly at KarenPalmer@wetheworld.org. And just really honored to be here in circle with all of you. I just want to really deep bow to each of your work and say, you know, anything at all that I can do to support you. I would be really, really honored to really amplify the work you're already doing.
That's great. And you're wearing a We the World t-shirt.
I am wearing a We the World t-shirt.
That's great. So I have a few announcements that I'd like to make. As you know, this is a monthly show, the Welcome to We show. And the next one will be in June. I think it's June 16th. And there are all kinds of interesting things happening in June. You can find out more about this by going to we.net, but I'll just mention that June is International Children's Month. That was started by our dear friend Heidi Little. And so there's all kinds of interesting things happening regarding children. And one program that We the World has done over the years that relates to children as part of our Children and Youth campaign is called An Urgent Message from Your Children. I think some of you might find this interesting. It's a project that was started by our dear friend Carol Hart, who's no longer with us, but she helped to launch Sesame Street. And the idea is to encourage children who are 12 years old and younger to work with their parents and teachers to create videos where they express their fears, their concerns, and their hopes for the future of the planet, especially regarding the environment. And so if you go to weyourchildren.org, you'll see the invitation video. We interviewed like 29 kids and put together this incredible video with these kids from all over the world. And then you'll also see the videos that these kids have made. Some of the kids are as young as 5 years old. The oldest are 12. And it's really amazing. weyourchildren.org. And let's see, June 13th is the 100-day countdown to the International Day of Peace. And Sue is leading the way with connecting to Paul Hawkins' Drawdown team to feature one of the 100 programs proposed by Paul Hawken in Drawdown for each of the 100 days leading to the International Day of Peace, which is September 21st. Do you want to say anything further about that, Sue?
Well, it's just an opportunity to see how we can get people interested in understanding the importance of and taking action on each of these solutions to reverse global warming. And the Sustainable Floridians program is working with a group called Eco Challenge. They do have a Drawdown Eco Challenge, and we'll be incorporating that into what we call the Sustainable World Games.
Yeah, definitely. And June is also the 3-month countdown to 11 Days of Global Unity. We had our 15th anniversary of 11 Days of Global Unity this past September. So this will be the 16th anniversary. And we've had amazing people working with us, Jane Goodall and Deepak Chopra and Desmond Tutu, and a long list of amazing folks, Hazel Henderson, and long list. And so that's coming up, and that's what gave birth to the 11 campaigns for change, of which, children and youth and environment and peace and women, all of these are part of that. So I'll mention once again, to collaborate with We the World and the We campaign as an individual or an organization, go to we.net/partner. Any final words, Karen?
Well, I just think that this has been such an amazing hour to spend with these beautiful, beautiful, inspirational and uplifting, amazing humans on our planet. I feel like it's so exciting to think that we can, come together like this and really talk in a circle environment. And thank you, Sue Blythe, so much for having this vision and for, bringing this vision and loving this dream into our reality. I love the idea of these movies that you're talking about and these films and I'd love to talk to you guys more about ways that we can there's some really cool projects that I'm working on right now that I'd love to see if there's ways that we can bring this all together, So Rick, how about you close us out with our wonderful comment that we have from the quote of our dear friend.
Okay, so in 2009, we launched We.net and the We campaign of We the World. And the keynote speaker there was Jonathan Granoff, who was nominated in 2014 for the Nobel Peace Prize. And the last thing he said at this launch of the We campaign is, he said, "I hope we expands so much that there is no longer any them." So thank you all, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye. It's all about we.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.
Too.